Okay, so hello, girls, and this is Magnetic Conversations again. And I'm so proud, to be honest, and glad to have here this beautiful woman. She's from Portugal. Aren't you from Portugal?
I live here. I live here.
You
However,
live
I am not. Yes, my
amazing.
name is very much not that, but yes.
Great. So I see the whole, sunny thing in your face. But first things first. So your name is Manuela Mitevova, and I see you. Actually, I saw you first on Instagram,
Mm.
where I saw you teaching about stug hips, impossible to do squats, like all this, like shoulders, like closed like that. And I thought, okay, this is for me. So then I bought your program, Hips Like Honey. It is not an advertisement, not at all. I'm just telling my story. I bought the program, I started practicing, and I have this amazing audience, like a community of women with my clothing brand and as well the magnetic conversations, and I started sharing like, oh, this is this program for hip opening and like all these emotional things, and like everybody was like, what's this, what's that? And I started sharing a little bit, digging a little bit, and I'm so proud that the whole thing happened, and we have this beautiful body and spiritual teacher Manuela here. Hi.
Oh, hello. Thank you, Agnès, so much for having me. It's really a pleasure.
Yeah, indeed. And when I saw this, let's start with the program I tried, because this is what opened my mind, and the thing which I never thought about, that our bodies, and especially the hips, like the hip area, is like I don't know, like a box of stored things, basically emotions. Did I explain it correctly?
Yes. So the thing with the body, how we tend to look at it from the Western perspective is that we split it from the mind completely, right? So
Mm.
whatever is going on in our lives, in our minds, our overthinking, anxiety, stress, we kind of tend to think of it that this is something that lives in our head and that our body is just automatically doing whatever it's doing and that it's separated. But of course, now we know, and what other traditions, for example, in the East have known for so long, is that everything is connected. So this is what it means to psychosomatically experience something. So
Mhm.
if we are nervous and stressed about an event that we have or an interview that we have, we feel it in the belly. We feel
Yeah.
all these butterflies and we feel so just anxious, of course. And this is anxiety is actually a physical expression, right? It's
Mhm.
not just something that happens in the head. And how this also carries then through the hips is because the hips house such big muscle groups. It's the psoas muscle that connects the torso to the lower body, and it also gets very stuck because we sit all day. So now we have a muscle that doesn't necessarily move so much in our day to day. Plus, we add so much stress onto it. So everything in the body is just getting contracted around the center. So we're squeezing our shoulders
Mm.
forward and we kind of bringing our knees inwards. So you can kind of think of it almost as a protective stance against all the stress and everything that we're experiencing. Because if you think how the babies are born, they're kind of in an embryo
Yeah.
protective cocoon. And we somehow subconsciously know that this is how we can keep ourselves safe and how we can protect ourselves. So the body instinctively wants to go into this. But of course, as a baby, then we have the parents ideally there to help us open up a little bit, to explore, to move around. So we're not constantly and chronically stuck. But we also have this opening, right? So it's going into the protection, but then having people around you, having your own resources to also open up.
Mhm.
But
To
what
feel
happens
safe, maybe. Sorry to interrupt. Maybe, yeah, feel
exactly, to
safe.
feel safe. And
Mm.
what happens these days is that we have forgotten how to resource this within ourselves. And maybe we don't even have people around us that would do that for us, right? It's not always a given that the parent is there to help us with
Yeah.
this, that help us feel safe. And then we feel disconnected from this. And then we close in even more. So now the body is just conditioned to always go into this protection and clenching when it's stress and when it's feeling that it's not safe. And where it comes to the hips, it's even more complex than that, because so many people, so many women in my program come to me with the problem of the pelvic floor and tight pelvic floor and how much pain they're having from that, and trying all of the different kinds of options that there are there.
Mhm.
But down the line, what this comes down to is that it's the pelvic floor. Most of the time, what I see is just it's so extremely exhausted from being clenched all of the time from this stress response.
Can I ask you something just for just a side note? So the pelvic floor is like this part here, and it's contracted when we contract our buttocks, or no? Or it's
Yes,
different?
so the pelvic floor holds all of your organs kind of inside. So it's like the ball at the bottom of your pelvis. So you can imagine
Beautiful,
like
like a
this is the
bowl.
ball.
Nice. I like
Yes,
that.
it is exactly like a ball. And for example, when you tuck and untuck your pelvis, it's like you can imagine spilling out the water to the front, spilling it out to the back. So that's how it kind of moves. And that's how we have the mobility in our hips as well, to kind of move it forward, move it back. And it's the pelvic floor can squeeze itself and can clench. And it can also release, right? But if we're under constant stress, we are subconsciously clenching. So we also have our throat, which is kind of almost the same structure as the pelvic floor, is like this sphincter, right?
Yeah.
And it clenches. It's this muscle that you don't even feel you're clenching, but you are clenching it if you are stressed. And so it's the same situation that happens there. So when we clench that pelvic floor constantly, it's just it gets depleted, it gets weakened because it's overly clenched. It's not
Right,
because it's lacking strength. It is strong enough, but it is so exhausted. It's as if, imagine that you were always clenching your biceps the whole day.
Exactly.
You could not do it. Like they just get so weak because you cannot do it anymore. So this is what happens so often with the pelvis. And of course, there are other conditions that people can experience and other reasons for pelvic pain or discomfort and for hip discomfort. But what I see a lot is that people don't realize how much the chronic stress and the subconscious clenching affects their body. And where this is coming from is not being able to feel safe in the body and to process emotions when they happen. So anxiety is natural, sadness is natural, fear is natural, all of these. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all natural. It's just that we have forgotten how to really allow that to be experienced in the body without instantly going into this shock that, oh, this emotion is happening to us. We have to suppress it or do something not to
Or
feel
reject it or get rid of it. But no way to acknowledge it, to see it, to sit with it and let it go, right?
Yes,
What we
exactly.
do, because we're like selective. This emotion I like, this one I don't like. This one I take, this one I don't.
And this is such a modern way of looking at things, right? And not modern just in our century, but also in modern Western worlds in general, how we kind of like to split everything into good and bad, and that we only want to have the good ones, and the bad ones we are just not capable of processing. And maybe even we would like to, but we just don't have the ability or the tools to do that. And I completely understand that so many people just don't have the ability to really address anything emotional that is difficult, because maybe no one taught them how to do that. And it's a difficult skill to learn later on in life if that was not developed when you were a child, of course. So this is something that we learn through watching how the adults are basically reacting to certain things. And if we don't have this opportunity, now we think that we have to be afraid of feelings, that we have to be afraid of crying, that we have to be afraid of feeling fear. So it just all kind of spirals down to a point where we are afraid to feel anything, because it starts somewhere that we're trying to push down the negative, but then because we're so used to doing this with emotions, now we're also pushing down the positives. It's impossible to split them because the body doesn't recognize, oh, this is good, this is bad. It just doesn't.
This was supposed to be my next question. Thank you for saying that, because logically thinking, like if I refuse to feel, I don't know, loneliness or sadness, so when the happiness or something sunny comes up, I'm like automatically like, skip. So that's how we build up, and that's how we come, with all due respect, some sort of robots who do not feel like, and then we live in our heads, right?
Yes,
this is what happens.
And
and this is no good.
It's no good. And it's difficult to realize, I think, for a lot of people, that our capacity to feel the negativity, quote unquote, is also increasing or decreasing than our capacity to feel the good thoughts, the good emotions. So like we have to have both, really, ideally, in this situation. So it's not just splitting one or the other. It's allowing everything to come up, not necessarily having to And I think this is another thing that I think people struggle with a lot, is that there's a misconception that whenever emotions arise, we have to analyze them and figure them out. And so this feels and fix it. And this exactly. And this feels like so much work, right?
Yeah.
So
It's like a
now
whole.
if I start feeling anxious and I don't press it down or I don't push it away, now I have in my mind that, oh, I have to see, why am I feeling like this? How can I feel a bit better? How can I fix this? How can I not feel like that next time? It's immense work. And of course, we're going to shy away from that. So if in our mind, it's all about fixing and controlling and navigating how the emotion is expressed, this is going to be very difficult. When in truth, what the emotion is actually asking us to do is just to observe, because the emotion has a shelf life of a few seconds. When we feel an emotion, we feel it for a few seconds, and then if that emotion persists, that's just our brain keeping that emotion
Developing.
going.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we just
Roaming it.
allow it, okay, I'm feeling anxious, allow it, be with it for just a second without judging, without analyzing, without having it to go anywhere, it's 100% that it will just dissipate.
Yeah.
But if we always think that we have to go into it, we have to analyze, we have to discover more about it and so on, now we're going in with the mind. And now the mind is keeping that in a perpetual state of anxious stress that we need to somehow figure out. So it's actually much easier than people think to allow emotions to come and go rather than just press them down. That's so much more work for the nervous system. It's so much more work.
Exactly. And then what I thought that then the anxiety comes on top of your anxiety because you're anxious, because you're feeling anxious. It's crazy.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's like with the sleep, you know, like when you're thinking like, I cannot sleep. So of course you won't sleep because you're thinking about that you're not sleeping. But what about, Manuela, what about these older emotions? For example, the ones which are already stored in the body? Because let's say, I don't know, for example, 10 years ago, I was not aware of the fact how to be with emotions, how to accept them, how to acknowledge them, how to sit with them, as you beautifully said. But if I feel like it is already in my body, can I help it somehow?
Of course, absolutely. And it's not at all necessary to go into the actual experience or the memory of what has happened. And what so often happens is that, again, people think that in order to process that, they need to relive that. And so often these stuck emotions are something that is, quote unquote, quite difficult and negative that happened. A lot of trauma has happened to a lot of people, whether big or small. And because we don't have the capacity or the tools to process that, it just lives in our body now because we just didn't have a way to process it at the time, right?
Yeah.
But there's still a way to allow it to move through the body without actually having to go into the experience, because a lot of people are, I think, afraid of having to go into that and being literally re-traumatized by the event. And there's no need to actually do that, because the emotion itself, as I mentioned at the beginning, is a very much bodily response. The emotions are actually the body responding to what's going on inside of it and outside of it. So it is a bodily thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that to process an emotion, we need to go into the memory, which is essentially a mind thing. So we don't have to relive what happened in order to actually release it. And how I like to teach this kind of release, this kind of stuck emotion release, is just to move through the main big muscle groups. One of them is being the hips a lot, and the psoas, which again is a big muscle that connects the upper body into the hips, and it's really responsible for our fight or flight as well, because of course it helps us to run or fight. So our brain knows that this muscle specifically is going to tense whenever we feel unsafe, and with not good experiences, with potentially traumatizing experiences, there's a lot of tension that goes into the psoas, because that is the muscle that helps us fight or flight. However, if we are not able to fight or flight in that moment because of whatever reason, then that energy gets stored there. So imagine it's as if you wanted to start running, but there's a wall in front of you, and you're tensing your whole body, ready to go. And there's all of this energy. You're bringing up all of this energy. It is in you, but there's a wall in front of you. You can run, but this energy doesn't just dissipate. that's how the emotion stays in. It's not the memory, it's the physical emotional expression of that emotion. This is what is getting stuck in the body. So now it's all of this energy in all of those fight or flight muscles that is locked there because of that trauma response. And so now what we try to do with movement is remove that wall. So you can now imagine that you are running and you can finally complete this experience, this fight or flight, and move that psoas muscle, move that body, maybe open up the chest and really experience how it would be like to get away or to fight or to actually engage your muscles instead of just being blocked by this wall. So this is how I always teach, getting rid of old stuck emotions. And it's really just removing that wall from there, that all the energy can all of a sudden basically move outside of the body. And so many people are experiencing this in Hips Like Honey and in my other programs as well, because it's a sudden feeling of release. And we don't necessarily know when it's coming from because we didn't think of that event. Maybe we don't even know that this event just got cleared from the body, but it does happen because all of a sudden the body, after years and years of having this wall in front of it and trying to run or fight, has that removed. And now the energy can just dissipate, finally can dissipate out of the body. And this is really what emotional processing is to me, and what it is to a somatic kind of practice, and what I try to teach to people who are afraid of re-traumatizing themselves or really not knowing how to get into their emotions, their stuck emotions. It's such a gentle way that at the same time is extremely powerful.
I wanted to share with you some personal experience of a friend of mine. It's a male person. It's a man, and he has issues with his I think knees or hips. I'm not sure, but some joints. And that one of these osteopathic doctors told him that these are stored emotions, especially anger. So just my curiosity question for you is like, different emotions might be stored in different locations, or it is not related?
So according to traditional Chinese medicine, it is very much related. And actually in every organ is kind of responsible for a different emotion.
Oh.
But so for example, the anger is an emotion of the liver. So a lot of the time of the liver. So a lot of the time people will have a lot of tension in their core. So if they start to massage a little bit on their right side on the core, they might see that there's a lot of tension there. Or even if they do some side body openings that allow that right side body to open a little bit more, they might notice that there's a lot of either resistance or discomfort, or then at the end really release, because this is really an emotion that tends to live there. And of course, we have all the other organs and the other emotions, and for people, it can really vary. And it's not, I would say that it's not so black and white, that really the anger is just an emotion of the liver.
Yeah,
exactly. So this is a very good way to look at it, and I really like to incorporate traditional Chinese medicine and their look on how energy moves through the body and in which organs it lives, and how the meridians are helping to move the energy through the body, but at the same time also understanding that the body is a system, and when there's anger in one part, there's very likely anger in other parts as well, because it's not split into these separate rooms as if in the body, but everything is really open and it's flowing. So to me, when there's anger in the body, I try to teach that release by somatically allowing the energy to be pressed out of the body, either through the hands, by pushing, or by pushing, for example, against a wall. This is an amazing practice.
Literally pushing. Right?
Yes, I shared this recently on my Instagram account as well, a practice of how to actually stand against a wall and just like imagine that you're pushing the wall away, and all of this anger and frustration is going out of the hands and into the wall. And it is so powerful to see how much energy can be released just through this, because we don't often give ourselves this luxury of connecting with a hard surface and just letting it take everything, right? Yeah. Even if we lay down in shavasana at the end of the yoga session, I think we're still clenching a lot because we're somehow afraid that if we just let go, that we're going to lose our minds, we're going to lose our bodies, we need to kind of keep it together. So I think everyone is on some level trying to keep everything together, and everyone has so many things to keep together and so many balls to keep juggling in the air that it feels like if we just drop it, it's just, that's the end, right? And we've worked so hard to keep everything up. Exactly, keep them up. So if someone asks me now in Shavasana, like really just let it go, we are almost unable to do that. And actually the earth is there to completely receive you. You cannot fall further. You cannot fall underneath. It's just there.
Still, you're like, maybe like your eyes are like tickling, or like there's some little movement anyways, always. For me as well. So I can completely understand your clients or your audience. And just a quick question about this anger thing and the wall, just to be clear for our women who are listening. So are we using this, let's say anger, but could be any other emotion, exercise the moment when we feel the anger, the heat coming up, or we want to process the old one or with the fresh one? How?
Yes. So both are very effective. I think these small somatic practices are very handy to know whenever you all of a sudden feel this surge of anger. Of course, we know the traditional way of screaming into a pillow. This is amazing. Why are we not doing that anymore? This is an amazing somatic practice that really helps, because what we want to do with these emotions that seem to arise in a very overwhelming way is we want to disperse them out, express them. But of course, with anger, what comes with anger? We want to scream, we want to hit something, we want to push, and we don't allow ourselves to do that. So anger is a very specific emotion in this, that it's been very demonized in our society, that the expression of it's not accepted. We cannot,
you should not do that.
Yes, you should not do that. Exactly. But because of that, we've also lost the ability to do that in the privacy of our home. So I think no one is going to go home later on after the event that really angered them and still scream. But that's actually what they could have done, So what I'm trying to do with these practices as well is introduce something that will still move the energy, and that it's possible to do even in a more public space. So for example, you can stand and push that wall even in your office, for example, no one's going to hear you. Exactly. So it's still something that moves the energy through the body, and it allows it to basically go out in a productive way. You're still doing something, and you're doing it in a physical way. So it's really kind of putting mind and body together in an actual real way, not in the way that, everyone just talks about and it really makes no sense. This is what it really means to put the mind and body together. You're doing a bodily practice that has an intention of moving energy, moving emotions, and also clearing your mind.
Yeah. Would it be effective on kids or just for adults? For example, let's say a boy is angry after losing a football game. Because I have two boys, and they're always like full of colorful emotions. Of course, I accept them as they are, but sometimes I feel like I could help them maybe with some little advice, like maybe. So what I do as a mother is more like intuitive thing, because I do not have all this information. But like I said, can you run as fast as you can? Because I see like he's all,
Yes.
So good work, right?
This is beautiful. And this is something that we really should be teaching kids as well, because if you learn this as a child, of course, this is going to be then how you operate as an adult. And dispersing anger in a healthy way, it's amazing, because once again, going back to what I said before, that every emotion has a shelf life of a few seconds. So actually, if you tell your boys to run as fast as they can, they will do it for a few seconds and then gone, done, I'm clear. I don't have to do it forever. However, if they do not do that and they don't get rid of that anger, then it kind of bubbles up inside of them.
Come up in a random situation.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So you, first of all, never know when that is going to bubble up. And this is also for adults, when we keep all of this anger and it turns into resentment, and then all of a sudden we snap at everyone, which is not something that we want to do, but we didn't channel that anger in a healthy way. So of course, it's a perfectly amazing way to tell your boys to just run as fast as you can, do something very bursting and explosive in that moment, just to let go of that energy, or just scream, jump, shout, do something for a few seconds, and it will be out of the body, because essentially this is what the body is asking for. This is the emotional expression of anger, which is natural, because the kids, they kind of know what the natural expression is.
Yeah,
they know
that's what I
they
thought.
throw a tantrum, you know, so
Yeah.
they know that if they're feeling angry, they're gonna throw that tantrum,
Yeah.
and that's it.
So we should learn from them, not teach them.
Yes, exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem, I think, is that we are always kind of trying to make them then feel that that is not right,
Exactly.
that
Like put
needs
them
to
in
be
the box.
compressed.
Yeah.
Yes, put them in the box. Like, don't do that, don't do this. And then, of course, these tantrums
Like, yeah.
now
Yeah.
are longer and longer, you know? So because
Yeah.
now you are not allowing it, so the child is essentially kind of pushing into what you're pulling away. So now you're taking away the ability to express something, and they're pushing more into that. So if you kind of meet in the middle a little bit more and allow them to do what they naturally want to do, it's gonna pass. But if you keep pushing the other direction and withdrawing what their natural right to expression is, of course they will, you know, want to claim more of it. It's just natural. It's what we do as adults as well, and this is what we learn as kids. So if you can kind of allow them to process in outbursts and be like, yes, this is perfectly fine and acceptable right now, of course, as long as it is acceptable and that no one is getting hurt or anything.
Of course.
So it's amazing to do that. Yes.
Instead of like shushing them, like don't do that, don't shout, don't run. Yeah. But then coming
Yes.
back to adults, you know, we were talking about anger. Yes, it's a very itself standalone. It's a very expressive, explosive emotion. But what about all these like soft and blue and moody emotions? Like, for example, if I feel, I don't know, sad or lonely or disappointed, so I should, I don't know how to put this question. Like, if I feel like I need to put myself into bed with a blanket, so I should go with that, or this is the opposite what I should do? Like maybe turn myself up, like put some beautiful music into that. So what's the better way if there is one? I don't know.
Yes, that's actually a great ending to a question, because if there is one, it's very hard to say, right? It's very hard to say. And for some person, maybe today you're feeling like this and you decide, no, actually, I'm going to cheer myself up and I'm going to put on some music and I'm going to treat myself to a nice coffee date with myself and go buy myself something. And that's fine. And another day you experience the exact same emotion, but you decide, oh no, actually, I'm going to go curl up in bed and do nothing. And the beauty of this is that your nervous system has flexibility to decide what feels right in that moment, so that it's not always going towards one expression, but it can also drive it towards different ways, right? So in any case, even if you decide to cheer yourself up, what we're trying to do here is not push the emotion down, but sit with it for a moment and acknowledge, okay, so this is how I'm feeling right now, and what am I choosing to do from here? And now you have this choice, right? But at least you have acknowledged that this emotion has come up in you, and now you can try to navigate it in different ways. And of course, one day it might be something, another day might be something else. And for different people, it will be a different thing. Maybe someone does a yoga practice, maybe someone just lays in bed. So it's really more about intuitiveness and listening to what your body actually needs, because I can be sad and I can need my bed, and I can be sad and I can need connection. I can need my friends. So it's more about listening to those nuances of what that emotion is driving me to do, right? So every emotion essentially is a signal from the body to, because the balance came off. So it's like these alarm systems, right? So it's like a thermostat in your body. So now, oh, we went a little bit up. We feel a little bit more anxious. So the emotion is basically a way of your body to tell you, oh, maybe we need to do something in order to bring it down into our core, into where we are usually balanced and amazingly and feeling wonderful.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the sadness. So if the temperature kind of drops down in the thermostat, now the body is telling us with this emotion of sadness, oh, maybe you need some connection with other people, or maybe you need to watch a sad movie to like really feel into that, right? So it's really listening in to that thermostat and seeing and looking how it jumps up and down, but not identifying with it, because it is it is essentially just a system of alerts.
Mm.
It's not actually, the emotions are not something that defines us. It's if you now feel sad, sadness does not define you. It's just your thermostat went up and down. Is the same as you would do in your house. You would go and check it and try to fix it if you want that stable temperature. So really, it's about navigating those signals and learning what feels better for you at that moment. So the fixing is really not necessarily about fixing the emotion, but about kind of fixing your state to get into your balance again. It's not about going against that emotion. It's about thinking, how can I help myself to get back to balance? And I think once we understand this shift, and it's not me fighting against anxiety, me fighting against sadness, me fighting against fear. Now it's how can I help my body come back to that feeling of safety, connection, and calm. So really, this is essentially what it's trying to do. And so often we beat ourselves down saying that, oh, I should not be feeling this. How do I fix this? How do I do that? How do I do this? But really, it's about how can I help myself be the best version of myself that I know to be, the calm and the relaxed one.
Yeah. Well, I have two questions from what you said now. One is, I sense a little bit of this beautiful definition, if I understood it correctly, and it makes total sense for me that when I'm not identifying myself with this emotion, so it's like I am not angry, I feel angry, which is for me is different, or I am sad or I feel sad, right? Because is it me, the sadness or the anger or the love? I don't know. And it's my feeling, I say it, but it's not me, Yeah.
Exactly. And it is something that passes. It is transitory. So it's wonderful to know that whenever we're going through times that are difficult, that of course, to every down, there's a high. It's like a wave. We cannot have emotions that are only on the top and then try to imagine that there's nothing at the bottom. It is a natural wave, and it's beautiful to acknowledge that it happens, and none of it is actually us. We are the ocean of that wave, and these waves are just happening. It is just going, and it is life to experience the highs and the lows. And of course, we try to mitigate that as much as possible and stay in balance as much as possible. But I think the point of the work is that even if we are experiencing something that is not necessarily comfortable or nice to feel, that we're still able to be okay with being the ocean. We're just welcoming it all. It's just happening. It's a wave, it's a bump on the road.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Well said. But we speak about the people who tend to feel emotions and to see them and to grasp them. What about the people who work a lot, do not pay attention to their bodies? Then maybe they come back home late, they're super tired, so they binge watch, let's say, Netflix and have a glass of wine. I like wine as well, but just the whole concept, of like not feeling, numbing, and what emotions? I work and I'm tired. Forget it. What's that? So is there any way to maybe give an idea for them how to start maybe?
Yes. So the way to start in a situation like this is always as gentle and as slow as possible. And how I like to think about this kind of numbing is that it always has a reason. So we don't choose necessarily that now we're just gonna numb everything out of our life, but there's always, it's in the polyvagal sense of the polyvagal theory, we always are doing all of these behaviors based on our fight, flight, or freeze mode. So our survival modes, basically. So someone can naturally be a freezer, which means that they tend to respond to stressful situations in a way that numbs their experience. So maybe I'm not even choosing to just turn on Netflix and drink wine and just completely zone out. Maybe this is my survival response. And maybe my stress is so overwhelming at work, and maybe I'm so disconnected from everything, everyone, in myself, that my survival response is always triggering and I'm always freezing. And that freezing feels like not being able to tap into the body and just having that fear in the body to actually experience anything. So it feels like, imagine a deer in headlights. So all of a sudden, it's just there. You stopped. You're not moving, but you have all of this stress and anxiety brewing up in you. And I think a lot of people who are experiencing what you explained do have a lot of stress and anxiety. It's not like they're Zen masters,
No.
just everything is completely amazing for them.
They
I
just
think
don't
there
have the
is
energy for anything else.
exactly. So I think there is so much of this. It's still inside of the body. And yet we are like this deer in headlights. Oh, I don't know. It's just coming at me. And I don't know what to do. And because I don't know what to do, I'm just going to be frozen here because that seems like the safest place for me to be right now because I just don't have the tools or the capacity or the energy to deal with any of that. So I think that there's a very big amount of people who are in this kind of experience and they really don't know how to get out of that.
Yeah.
And I shared recently also a video on my YouTube about how to somatically get out of freeze mode. And it's a very gentle practice. It's having you nod your head yes and no. No, just like back and forth, looking with your eyes around the room, really establishing the connection of your surroundings. Because what happens so much with freeze is that we are just kind of zoning in on the danger, and we're kind of like just protecting ourselves, and all the anxiety is in our body, but we're not aware of what's going on around. So somatically, if you start looking around you and being like, okay, this is okay, I'm safe here, everything's fine, I'm at home, nothing is threatening me, and then starting to do small movements, because so often with this freeze mode, we are unable to almost move at all. We're just stuck in a rigid stance. So we're not moving. And just introducing very gentle movements is very therapeutic to people. And they might think that why nodding my head yes or no, how is that going to help me at all? But it's actually training the nervous system to be okay with movement, because that is the first step.
Right.
Because the nervous system is so stuck in that expression of, I'm overwhelmed, and yet I'm so stuck and frozen. I don't even know what to do. I don't know. Nothing's going to help me. I don't know what to do. So it's just introducing small things. And even if you think that your head yes or no is going to do nothing, it's doing so much for the nervous system. So much. It's underneath. We don't even feel that, right? But it's in the body. And so this is one thing that I would have everyone start to just do, before even maybe putting on Netflix and watching that. Can you take a moment with your body? Just look around the room, behind you, in front of you, around, and just nod your head yes or no, and just like really move that neck, get some blood flow in there. Just move it. Maybe roll your shoulders. Small movements like this. There's no need to go into a crazy yoga practice. I think a lot of people think that in order to somehow heal, quote unquote, themselves, they need to do 1 hour of yoga a day or 1 hour
and 2 hours of meditation right away.
Exactly. It's not that at all. Honestly, you can just do a minute, just noticing your emotions in this moment and moving around, shoulders rolling, rolling your neck, and just releasing all that tension that gets stuck there. Maybe giving a massage to your feet, and just something that really connects you with your body. And that has so much power in the state of when we're numb, but actually we're overwhelmed and we don't know where to take it. So it's small little steps that we can take. And I think yoga these days is just so forceful in our faces that now everyone thinks, oh, I need to bend over backwards. I need to do all of these movements and only then I will be healed. And it just makes no sense. Of course, you can just sit there for a moment, roll your shoulders, and this is the beginning of your whole healing journey. And maybe for 3 months, you're not doing anything else. And this is completely enough. And it's amazing to witness how a lot of my students are also seeing how powerful that is. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need to be anything else. And this is the beauty of the work, that it frees you from all of these misconceptions and heavy burdens of what you should be doing, quote unquote, into what you feel like doing with your body, because you can.
Wow. Yeah, I love this concept of what you choose to do and what you have to do. And it's everywhere in life, actually. Imagine the guests are coming, but you don't really want them to come, but like you should. And then you cook for them because you should, but you don't feel like, and you would prefer to spend an evening with yourself or your partner or family. And then if you change your point of view and your attitude and you're like, I want them to come and I want them to welcome in my house and to make them, I don't know, apple pie or something. So it's similar with the body. I have to work out, I have to do yoga, I have to do meditate, or I want to if I feel like, right?
Yes. And it's also about introducing very early on how good movement can feel, because it really should not, to my belief, it should not be about having to wait for months and months to finally get some sort of a physical or emotional release. It's really about seeing how just in a few minutes, maybe a few seconds, you can experience a shift. You can feel calmer, you can feel looser. And just because of this, and we're complex human beings, but at the same time, we're very simple. If it's like eating a sweet dessert, we get a treat when we feel good. And now I feel good. I want to eat that dessert again, right? So it's the same thing with the movement. If I do this few minutes of nodding my head yes and no, and rolling my shoulders and really releasing my neck, maybe giving myself a massage, it feels so good in my body that now I want to do it again. And I keep increasing on it because my baseline keeps increasing. So last week, maybe I did 5 minutes. This week, I'm doing 7 minutes because now I already know, okay, so I can do this. I have the confidence in myself. I know that it feels good. So I keep increasing. And maybe in a few months, you find yourself that you're doing 1 hour of movement without even knowing, and no one forced this on you. It's just how the body wanted to naturally move because it feels good. And that feeling good is something that everyone can achieve in their body. It's not necessarily something that they have to work hard for, it's not a reward. It's something that they have available in every moment. So even if they go to a yoga class and everything hurts, it's uncomfortable, don't go to that yoga class, do something different. It's different. It's finding something that works for you at this moment, and this moment always changes. So it's like building a routine for who you are right now, but expecting that to change in the next few months because you're going to be a completely different person.
Thanks
So
for that.
not getting stuck with who you are because of your movement. You're not that person. That's just a part of what you're doing, what your body is doing, right? So it's constantly flowing.
Yeah, beautiful. What about these? There's some certain, I'm not speaking about like, let's say classic yoga or like weights, like working out, but there's some certain maybe somatic movements or maybe even emotional release movements or like some nonlinear movements flow, if you've heard of that. At some situation, even myself, I feel like there's some movement which feels not physically hard, but like uncomfortable. For example, I feel the heat coming up, not the muscle, but the heat, or like the sickness, nausea coming up. What's that?
Yes.
Have you heard of that?
So I think, yes, this
yeah.
happens. I think this happens a lot. To me, it happens a lot. I think it happens to a lot of people also in my programs. It's basically we are working so much with energy when we are moving. It's not just the physical body, of course. Like the physical body is the muscles and it's the bones and the ligaments and the fascia and everything. But essentially what we are is energy, right? So we are this energy dispersed through this physical form. So whenever you move, that energy is also being moved. So of course, that energy then translates to emotions, translates to, for example, as you said, that nausea or anxiety, or now I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. Now I'm sad, now I'm crying. So the emotions and the energy are really something that very mutually, naturally arises from movement because it's not split, right? When we move the body, this is also what happens. Now, when you move the body, that thermostat that we talked about before is jumping up and down because you're not just laying or you're not just watching Netflix, you're doing something actively with your body. So now, of course, the thermostat is going up and down, which means that your body is now experiencing different emotions because it's wondering, oh, where am I going now? I'm going up, I'm going down. How do I get to my baseline? And so what we try to do with all of these movements is to allow your body and your nervous system to be flexible in this and to take, oh, now I'm feeling super hyper and anxious and agitated. Oh, but now I'm feeling happier and now I'm feeling ecstatic and now I'm feeling sad. And it's allowing all of this to happen within that practice. And it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of emotions, even if we're not doing much. So a lot of my practices are really very static in a sense. They don't look good most of the time, even on camera or showing them, like we're not doing much. It's a lot of for example, pelvic tucks and untucks. So you're just laying on your back and you're tucking and untucking your pelvis. It's minimal movement. You're almost not seeing anything.
Yeah.
But so much energy is being moved because you're moving your sacral chakra, your solar plexus chakra, you're moving all of those energy centers. And of course, the ancient traditions all knew that we have the energy to move there, right?
Exactly.
And it is being moved, and all of those emotions are now activated. So it's completely natural to feel that arising. And actually, I think that everyone should, quote unquote, be feeling that. Like, even if I go to the gym, I go to the gym with this experience. I always have this experience. It's very emotional because it's not split from my body. If I have some sort of anger or some frustration that I want to process, I go there and I work on expressing that out of the body, right?
Yeah,
so
that
it's
makes total sense. Yeah.
yeah, it's a beautiful way to do that. And with yoga is the same. Maybe we use it for a different way. Maybe we want to feel calmer or more relaxed, and that also facilitates that. So, but the emotions are always, the energy are always the body. It's always the same thing.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. I have one question about burnout and about stored stress, because all these things usually come out when it's either too late or almost too late, because it's not that, oh, you're almost burned out. No, it just comes, bam, you're there, So if you're there, and I know that it's a very long way to recover and to get well and get better and get yourself back, if I can say that. But is there perhaps some somatic exercise or like movement or even mental maybe exercise to help to go through this process? Because we speak about it a lot within my community, because I hear so many women or girls who are more or less at your mind, I imagine, similar age. So like, they work, they do the career, they have like perhaps some problems at home, they have small kids, and then bam, they're like off. So maybe there's some gentle way to start to get out of there altogether with what they're doing already.
I think that is a very complex process. And at the same time, it is a process that anyone can do. It requires, however, working together with the body, with the mindset, as you said. And first and foremost, I would say that it is about allowing yourself to be okay with resting and saying no. This is a big thing. This is a big thing. Boundaries, exactly.
Yeah, beautiful.
And so often with burnout, I think people kind of rush to want to fix that and find a practice that will help them, a therapy that will help them, and so on. But I think the first step in that would be just practicing, doing that as your practice, practicing not doing anything and not feeling guilty about that, So for example, if you're experiencing that, a burnout, and you took a week or a month out of your work, can you then be at home and not feel like you have to clean it every day and that you have to cook 5 meals for everyone?
Because you're not working, so you're at home. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is perpetuating that, right? So can you now practice even for a few minutes a day? And this will again increase how with every practice that you're learning. But at the beginning, maybe it's just going to be 5 minutes. Can you just sit and maybe read your favorite book? Can you feel good about that? Because you can also read that book and be like, oh, my 5 minutes is almost up. I need to go and cook. I need to go and clean.
Guilt.
Can you practice? Exactly. Can you practice reading that and not looking at the time and not feeling guilty? This is, I think, the very, very first thing is just removing the guilt of not doing anything and not having to answer to anyone for not doing anything. Because I think so often we ascribe our worth to how much we can do, how much we can do and produce and do for others. And only if we do all of these things, exactly, and only then can we be worthy of love, of affection, of other people. And so if we don't do that, we feel that we are unworthy. So actually, it's just wonderful to experience and practice to experience how it would feel like that you don't know anything to anyone. You're perfect as you are. You don't need to cook. You don't need to clean. That's it. Nothing else is required of you. And just practice that. Practice that. And maybe for a month, you will just slowly start seeing that this is making more sense to you, that yes, you actually don't need to clean all day. You don't need to cook all day. You don't need to do all of this work for everyone. But really, it's mostly, to me, at the very beginning, about this sense of being okay with just being.
Yeah.
Just being and saying no to people. If they say, oh, now you're at home, would you like to go for dinner? Would you like to go for lunch? Would you like to meet up or go to some, just practicing saying no and being okay with that. And again, divorcing that shame from it almost, and not apologizing for it, not saying like, oh no, actually, you know what, I have this or that. No,
I'm so
just
sorry.
saying no.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or inventing stories. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's so freeing to just say, actually, no, today I will not do that because I don't feel like it. And we feel so bad, right? Saying that,
Yes.
oh, I don't want to meet today because I
Sounds
don't
so
feel like
arrogant,
it. It sounds so arrogant.
arrogant, like
Exactly.
don't feel like,
Exactly.
But you're
Yes.
completely correct. And it is a tough practice because at some point in my life, years ago, I had a task that just put a timer and just sit for I had 3 minutes, because I have a lot of energy as a person, but I used to put it into like acting and moving and doing and blah, 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 and of course I was super tired. But I had this exercise of like 3 minutes to sit. It was so hard. I thought I will get crazy. I can sit in whatever position, but do nothing, not even a book. Oh my God. But then, do time and everything, and I enjoy my time and I lay on the couch and do nothing like a cat. But back in the day, well, when I was all this like moving, doing, 3 minutes is exhaustion to stay still.
It is a lot. It is a lot. And I think if we think of it in the terms of meditation, it's very hard for people to get into that because it seems so counterintuitive to what we're used to. Like, how would I now stop, right? But I think there is also a different way to quote unquote meditate. You can meditate. Meditation, being seated and looking at a wall, it's only one single way to meditate. This is not the prescribed 100% way that you need to meditate. For the majority of people, this does not work. And that doesn't mean that they cannot meditate. Meditation can also be cooking a meal for yourself and really being mindful of how you're cutting vegetables, or going for a walk in the park, listening maybe to your favorite music. That is your meditation. That is your healing practice where you are just with yourself and you're saying yes to yourself. So it doesn't necessarily need to be so completely divorced from how we do life in the Western society, because at the end of the day, meditation is a practice that was developed for monks. I mean, we are not monks.
Exactly.
We are not used to live this life. We have things to take care of. We have families, we have friends, we have all of these things to navigate.
All these
so it
material things happening. Yeah.
Exactly. So it can be difficult. However, we can still nurture awareness and cultivate that presence. This is, I think, what is important here, that meditation has now taken such a jump in our culture. But at the end of the day, what we're actually trying to do is presence. Because meditation is presence. It's presence fully now in this one moment. And to get present, you do not need to just sit and stare in front of you. You can be present just walking. You can be present looking at beautiful flowers, or you can be present listening to your favorite music. If you can manage to fully just be right now and not have any thoughts about an anxiety about tomorrow's day of work or thinking about what I said wrong at that one meeting, this is presence when you are fully embedded in the now. So now you're meditating and you didn't even know that you're meditating. So I think that people don't realize how many avenues they have of actually meditating. They don't have to sit on a cushion and they're still doing it, So even back to your question, to the burnout, it's doesn't necessarily have to be sitting for a few minutes. It can be doing something that you really enjoy and that brings you into some pleasurable presence for you. something that you would really like to do and that you're not allowing yourself to do because you think it's too vain or too selfish.
Mhm. And what works, I believe, for one person is not necessarily going to work for another one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just for
of course.
somebody, watching birds is like, amazing and relaxing. And for another one is like disturbing.
Yes,
So you have to
exactly.
be very authentic in this case, right?
Yes. And it's interesting also to notice that what often the emotion that arises with sitting or doing nothing is usually boredom, right? We get
Yeah.
bored and we're so not used to being bored. We're so used to just picking up our phone, scrolling. Oh, I don't want to be bored. I don't know how to be bored.
Yeah.
This is what we usually do. So meditation kind of equals boredom because it drives us into this boredom. But at the end of the day, what you can also do with boredom, that's just the starting point, right? So boredom can be transformed and is often transformed into, for example, creativity. Now I feel bored. Oh, what am I going to do? I'm going to paint, or I'm going to draw something, or I'm going to make some music if I like music. I'm going to go for a walk and be creative with my body, or go for a dance class, So from this boredom, this was my starting point towards something else. So again, back to how allowing emotions is important. Allowing boredom is so important. Just be bored for a second, because then you can see what your body actually craves to do. I'm sure that it doesn't crave going on Instagram and scrolling. I'm sure of that. It does not crave to do that. It just craves to do something creative, something expressive. And if you give yourself enough time to just sit with it and decide, then it kind of nurtures a beautiful cycle of where you can honor yourself a little bit better.
Manuela, it was so beautiful. Thank you so much. It's so interesting. I've learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank
Really.
you so much.
I totally enjoyed this conversation. And yeah, thank you for everything. And thanks for advice and for inspiration for our classes and for opening hips and the
Thank you
rest
so
of our
much for
body.
practicing.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable. So thank you so much and cheers to Portugal and perhaps hopefully see you soon. I would like to hug you. Bye.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much. Bye, Agnė.
Bye.